The hut stood like a scar at the edge of the bush. Its walls were cracked, it had a sagging roof, and its doorway was even dark during afternoons. People always avoid looking too long at it, but they knew the men were inside the hut. Inside, they sat on an old mat, sitting close to one another as if they were bound by something no outsider could see. The skulls were laid in a woven basket, covered with raffia that looked older than any of them. Each time the skull was lifted, fear ran across the village without a sound. They poured their palm wine into the skulls as if they were cups meant for celebration, but nothing about their gathering was a feast. When the gods were raised, villagers counted their children twice before sleeping. Some clung to their beds without resting, waiting for daylight to come as if the sun would save them. Mothers stroked the hair of their babies until their arms began to ache. Fathers locked their doors that could not truly protect. Everyone carried the same thought, heavy and unspoken. Another life might not see the next morning. Okafor had not always been like this. Before the Skull Drinkers initiated him, he was just another great farmer with blistered palms and a loud joy that carried across his young fields. Now his shoulders are bent as if a load is pressing on them. His wife washed his clothes silently, though the stains told stories she did not dare to ask about. She cooked his meals, but he refused to eat them. The man she married was fading into something hollow and dangerous. His compound no longer held joy. His children no longer play as usual. Their games end quickly when their neighbors walk across the compound. They saw how other women pulled their children away when their father appeared. Even goats bleated in panic if he came too close. Nights were worse. His footsteps returning from the hut filled the house with a silence that suffocated. His wife lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long before her children's names were whispered by the skulls. Deaths began to arrive like uninvited guests, one after another. An old woman who once carried firewood to market never rose from her mat. A boy who could run faster than anyone fell to the ground near the stream, his clay pot breaking beside him. A baby whose naming songs had barely faded stopped breathing in her mother's arms. These were not illnesses. The bodies looked whole, yet life had left them. Villagers whispered that each sip from the skulls demanded another soul, and the men kept drinking. The market square grew so quiet with every burial. People no longer lingered to chat after buying food items. Instead, they hurried back to their homes, clutching their baskets. Every family lived with a question they could not voice out. Who is going to die next? At night, the darkness felt thicker, not because of spirits in the forest, but because the killers had faces they once trusted. Fear spread over them like oil on water, leaving nothing untouched. Chinwe's son vanished one evening, while washing his feet at the stream. By morning, his lifeless body was found near the cursed hut. People remembered hearing the men laughing in the distance the night before the little boy died. Chinwe cried until her voice began to crack, but the brotherhoods walked through the village as if nothing had happened. Neighbors gathered in silence, looking afraid even to comfort her with words. They sat with her but could not console her. Mothers held their children so close, pressing their heads against their chests. Fathers looked away, ashamed of their helplessness. Everyone knew what had happened, but their fear was greater than their grief. They lived like captives in their own land, where silence was the only shield left. Nnamdi was the town crier and now led the brotherhood. His voice, once trusted for announcing festivals and harvests, belonged only to the chants in the hut. His wives now moved silently in the village. Their lives were proof of what happened to anyone too close to him. People said he no longer talks as usual, no matter who died before him. He had become a man emptied of ordinary feeling. At night, villagers saw faint firelight through the broken roof of the hut. They spoke in whispers of what burnt there, but no man dared to check. The ground around the hut grew hard and cracked, untouched by footprints. Even hunters avoided setting traps in the nearby bush. It was as though the earth itself refused to welcome steps too close to the place where skulls were lifted. The village began to lose its color. The marketplace, once filled with chatter and bargaining, became muted. Women sat by their goods with faces carved in grief. Children no longer ran across the square. Instead, they clung to wrappers, watching the ground. Each greeting carried the weight of fear, as though speaking too loudly might draw attention. Families ate in silence, bowls shared without appetite. Even joy became suspicious. If a child laughed too loudly, parents hushed them, fearing happiness might be noticed and taken away. The air felt thick, not with sickness, but with waiting. Waiting for the next body to be carried to the ground. Waiting for another skull to be lifted. The knowledge that the killers were not spirits but neighbors hollowed the people. They carried grief not only for the dead, but for the trust that had died with them. One night, the brothers stayed in the hut longer than usual. The palm wine is said to have flown until the mats were damp. That same night, 3 villagers never woke. A mother wept over her only daughter, her voice tearing through the stillness. A father carried his son's body across the compound, his legs shaking. An old man's staff leaned unused against his bed, while his chest had already gone still. People began to whisper that the deaths followed the number of skulls lifted. Some wanted to flee, but leaving meant abandoning ancestral graves, farmlands, and everything they knew. The forest beyond was too filled with dangers, but the danger inside the village was worse. Still, they stayed. Each night became a gamble, each dawn a fragile gift. Even children understood the truth. Evil walked among them, and it did not hide behind masks. It wore the familiar faces of men. Okafor's wife began hiding pieces of food under her bed. Yams, groundnuts, anything small enough to carry if she needed to run with her children. She slept less each night, listening for his footsteps. Sometimes she wondered if she should flee before her children's names were called by the skulls. But fear held her down. She knew that running might only bring faster death. Her neighbors noticed her thinness, the way her wrapper hung loose on her body. They saw her children's clothes turn to rags, though her father returned with more than enough. People wanted to ask, but the questions remained locked in their throats. The village was no longer a family of many homes. Each house stood alone, carrying secrets and dread, its door shut tight, its mat heavy with grief. The elders gathered at the shrine, their backs bent more than age. They poured libations and prayed, but their words trembled. They knew this evil was not from the sky or forest. It was born among them, and some of the men had once sat beside them. Their voices rose and fell as they argued in the dark. Some wanted to leave it to the gods, others said action must be taken, but fear twisted their tongues. When dawn came, no solution had been found. Their hearts were heavy as they returned home, knowing they had failed their people. The graves grew in number, the fear spread like fire, and still they did nothing. The village cracked apart while they searched for courage they did not have. Even the children noticed their weakness, watching them walk back from the shrine with faces too heavy to meet any gaze. The killings never stopped. The skulls drank more lives, and the hut remained standing. Children grew into orphans, women became widows, and families scattered. The market square turned hollow, the laughter of children vanished, and the village lived in waiting. Each night felt like the last. Each morning felt undeserved. The killers drank and lived, while the innocent withered and fell into the ground. The people survived, but only in body. Their spirits had been drained. No savior came, no miracle happened. Only the skulls remained. Patient and cold, their mouth filled again and again with palm wine. The village had become a place of silence, its soul stolen, one god at a time. Life continued, but it was not life anymore. It was only endurance, stretched thin, with no promise of release. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, like this video, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. And please share it with your friends and family. Thank you for listening.